we're now going to meet three really dynamic, interesting, and beautiful souls and people. We're going to have a bit of a panel debate, but I'll first introduce the first two speakers, couple Joel and Michelle Levey. They're founder of Wisdom at Work and are regarded as the pioneers in the global mindfulness revolution. They work to integrate contemplative science and contemporary mind fitness training in leading organizations. And they were actually also among the first people to develop and introduce mindful leadership, mind fitness, and compassion-based programs with mainstream medical, higher educational, organizational, governmental, and military arenas back in the 70s, or from the beginning of the 70s. And over the past 40 years, they've worked with thousands of leaders in hundreds of organizations and really endorsed their inspiration, their knowledge, and above all, their vision. To the sense, I would just like to add this, that His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is an advisory on a number of the Levi's projects, once wrote in a letter to them, "You are presently engaged in work that has great prospects for bringing the Dharma," and that is the inner science of human transformation, "to a very wide section of people who may not under ordinary circumstances come into contact with these teachings. I am very pleased about the work that you are doing and send you blessings and prayers for the success." So what a more lovely introduction than that to the lovely, wonderful, and warm couple Levey. And Richard speaking first. And I also have the pleasure to introduce yet another beautiful soul and person that some of you already might have already encountered. He had a wonderful meditation this morning. His name is Gelong Thubten, and he's been a monk for 23 years, and he now he's based at the Samliling Monastery in Scotland. That was actually the first Buddhist monastery in the world. But today, he's not only spending his time in the monastery, he's traveling the world around, inspiring people and educating them in meditation, mindfulness, and wisdom, to business leaders, to prisons, to organizations, and so forth. So please give a warm welcome to the lovely Gelong Thubten.
Wonderful. Thank you to have you here. And how we're going to structure the next hour is that we will have Joel and Michelle presenting a little bit about their work, what they are doing, and afterwards Thubten is doing the same, and then we have some questions and panel discussions. Please, if you could go on stage and start your presentation. Thank you, Joel.
Good morning, friends. Once we get the slides up here, yes. As we begin, we'd really like to invite each of you just to take your seat and find yourself sitting here at this center of your universe. If you like, you could reach up and touch your heart drive, if you like. And as you do touch this heart drive, just consider how difficult it would be and challenging, overwhelming it might be to try and live your life just with all the files that are on your personal device without relying on the web, okay? So as you touch your heart, I'd invite you to envision or sense the dimension of the heart, whatever this is, be you oriented towards the vagus nerve or the heart chakra, just go here and envision that this dimension of your being is like a luminous jewel. And brighten the light of your wisdom, your compassion, the presence that you bring into the world right now, however it is that you know how to do that. And as you do, envision and sense, intuit that as you brighten this light, that light is instantly reflected in the heart jewels of all beings everywhere. And as you sense and intuit that, can you imagine dedicating yourself to brightening this light of your wisdom, your love, your compassion, your courage, in order to more fully activate that potential within the hearts and minds of all beings. And that's what gets you out of bed every day. That's your default, where you keep coming back to. And envision and imagine how rare it is in this crazy, turbulent, fastly spinning world for the people to be walking around with their lights on, rather than just as mindless zombie troublemakers, stumbling through their lives out of habit, wreaking havoc in our world. And how privileged we are to have even an inkling of the possibility. As you envision or touch, affirm, intuit, imagine this dimension and this potentiality, as you sit here, use all the special effects you can to envision the ripples that your life creates in the world, how you generously share your stress and your confusion when it's present for you, and that ripples out into the world and gets passed on through your social networks. And envision and set your intention for how you might leave this conference with greater wisdom, greater inspiration, greater skills, good slides, good data, and how that might ripple out through each of us to thousands or millions or billions of people. Some years ago, we were invited to facilitate acquisition of the best company in Denmark being absorbed by the Borg of the Intel organization, and to facilitate how they did this merger. And we began the session, it was a 4-day session, by just asking how many people's lives may be touched by the decisions that we make here in this room. There were probably about 60 people from Intel and Giga. And one of the engineer owners raised his hand and he said, well, how many people might be touched by the decisions we make here over the next 5 or 10 years? 2.5, 3 billion. And the engineer next to him says, yeah, and I wonder if we're creating the kind of world I want my kids to grow up in. So these are what are called VUCA times. This is an acronym that comes from the Army War College. These are volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, complex times. This was used initially to describe the modern battlefield, but is there anybody who's not living there right now? And in these times, as Einstein reminded us, we are not going to find solutions to these huge, complex challenges that humanity faces with business as usual. If humanity is to survive and flourish and thrive, we need to learn ways to elevate or deepen our consciousness, to expand our wisdom, to deepen in that, not just individually, but together. And what we'd like to explore with you today is some of the ways that we've smuggled this work into organizations for almost 40 years now, okay? How many of you think the waves of change in VUCA-ness are going to get any smaller going forward? Yeah, so this is a golden time. You want to see how we can create a business case for this work? We show people this slide, these 3 slides, and we say, how does this apply to you? Do you think you need to take an advantage to learn how to surf now before the big waves come in? Let's get real about this work. Interestingly, VUCA means in Zulu language, it also means wake up. And that's really what this is about. So how do we wake up to wisdom? What does that mean? And how do we source our deepest wisdom individually and collectively, not just for ourselves, not just for our shareholders, but how do we source the deepest wisdom we can for the benefit of all beings, not just the two-leggeds among us, but all beings. So
it can be very helpful to appreciate that there's a whole spectrum of motivations that bring people to want to learn, cultivate greater mindfulness. Sometimes we, in organizations, when we're bringing it in, we'll call it mind fitness. Just to appreciate, most people are aware of physical fitness, but most folks haven't received formal training in developing their mind. So in our work, we try to address all these levels, which really nest within each other. Individually, to reduce personal suffering, to improve our efficiency and high performance. We just heard a wonderful talk about enhancing wellness and well-being. Mindfulness is a foundation for becoming aware of what's really going on so that we can better know what we need to enhance our well-being and see clearly.
Sorry.
And cultivate patience. While they're doing that, we don't need all those words, but
I'm sorry.
I think just to appreciate from the individual to the collective, from beginning with our own suffering of organizations, our communities, our families, the world, to how can we live our highest potential? How do we realize that not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all? And to be able to address, to bring that into our work as well as our lives as a whole. And what we've seen in our work to renew and revitalize organizations, communities. Now I've got a moment of distraction. To really bring greater vitality into the worlds of work as well as the rest of our lives. What we've observed is the greatest value. Oh, okay, let's come back to that. But the greatest value that people really derive from this work, in their own words, is deepening their connection with themselves and with the people that they work with, their connection to nature, to the environment, a greater sense of integration, of linkage between the various parts of themselves, the various parts of their workplace community. Yeah, so developing greater resilience. And mindfulness is really the doorway, the foundation for awakening greater wisdom. If we see more clearly the way things truly are, then we can make wiser decisions and act with a greater clarity and insight about how things are connected and interdependent, how they inter-are, to quote Thich Nhat Hanh, a wonderful mindfulness teacher, who speaks about interbeing, that everything inter-is. Inspiration here from Francisco Varela, one of the co-founder of the Mind and Life Institute. And this quote we really use a lot in our work in organizations. It says that when any living system, Varela was also a microbiologist, and he observed when any living system from a cell to global community is suffering from ill health or sub-optimized in any way, the remedy is to be found by connecting it with more of itself, with more of it. So in mindfulness, we're connecting with more of ourself, our mind, our thoughts, our feelings, our body. And in relational practices that we really emphasize in our organizational work, we're connecting ourselves with our larger body, all the lives we touch through our work directly and indirectly, all the people we work with, our families, community as a whole, the planet as a whole. So expanding the sense of connecting ourselves with more of ourselves is really key to this work, to especially the wisdom aspect of it.
So clearly interest in these realms, these disciplines is going up. I began this research like over there in the next building, back in the early 70s with Beckman polygraphs spitting ink all over paper. I mean, it's just like how far we have come in these years in terms of researching, but you can see the upswelling of what's here. And there's two approaches to bringing this deeper work, these wisdom traditions into organizations. One is as apps. You come in, you teach an 8-week class, you do a seminar, people learn some skills, they're kind of optional, some people use them, some people don't, and that's great. You save lives that way, you improve efficiency, you open hearts and minds and wills, and that's fantastic. We very seldom go in and teach a mindfulness class or a mind fitness class. Mostly we go in and install organizational operating systems. working with visionary leaders like Alfred and others who just understand this is a way of life. This is about everything from top to bottom and inside to outside of how we live and work and love and create together. In organizations, the advantage of brain power, of neural coherence, is huge. And developing the capacity of people is so important because most people have never. How many of you had a lot of good mind training before the age of 20? So these are new moves for a lot of people. So over the last 40 years or so, we've been invited into the belly of the beast. We've had the chance to work with organizations that really were doing good in the world, teaching these kinds of methods. And we'd just like to give you a glimpse of some of those projects.
So about 5 years ago, we were invited by Google from some folks in their learning and development team, contacted us. After the smashing success of the Search Inside Yourself program, they were looking for what comes next? What do we follow that with? And we received a phone call asking if we would develop the next step for up in Seattle, Kirkland area where we live. And we developed what we called, and still is going on, the Mindfulness and Meditation Laboratory. And this began, and it was wonderful just not to have to smuggle this in, as Joel said, as we've done in other arenas like the military or other businesses that we've worked in where we've kind of had to really blend it in. Here we could be very explicit that this was a laboratory to develop our mindfulness and other mind fitness skills. And it began, in this case we actually did do classes, it began with 4 classes each quarter, and the themes that we addressed were actually surfaced from the Googlers themselves, whatever they were asking for. So how to develop greater focus, concentration, reduce stress, to develop more positive relationships, and many, many themes. As they came to us, we just designed that into actual practical sessions of practices, complemented by a detachment day, which is a retreat day, but it was called Detachment Day, for Googlers +1, which was a wonderful system that Google has of actually inviting the attendees to bring a guest, a family member, a friend, so to have like a support system who would understand the practices, be able to do them together. So a lot of families showed up for our detachment days. At first we were doing them off-site, which was lovely, in some really supportive environments, and then we decided to just do them on-site at Google, at the Google headquarters that we were at. And that was really transformational because people doing mindful walking, mindful eating, mindful dialogue right there at their workplace, and they were like, oh, I never noticed how beautiful this campus is. I've walked by that fountain a zillion times and I've never seen the beautiful landscaping and just how fortunate we are to be here, and just seeing things with fresh eyes right there, and to be able to associate that I can be present and connected here. I don't have to go away to do that. Was really eye-opening and really just inspiring for so many. And also, just one thing to add on when we were doing the class series, it kept expanding so that we actually did, which my understanding was the first time at Google, live streaming video connections with our live classes there in Seattle and Kirkland, with over 24 Google sites around the globe where people would come together in New York or Dublin and wherever they were, in South America, meditating with us in their rooms, in their countries, in their sites, all together doing these practices. It was just it worked really well. It was really successful community building as well as mutual encouragement and support. So, yeah, that was really one of the highlights from our time there. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, last time we were at the Googleplex in Silicon Valley, we're sitting in the reception area waiting for Bill Duane. And a woman walks by and goes, "Oh, I was in your big web class," you know, and it was just fun to be recognized in that kind of way.
So gradually what happened, we did numbers of quarters like that over the past 5 years and the detachment days, and then gradually champions began to emerge from the community who really felt more confident to begin to conduct mindfulness gatherings on site. It started with 1 day a week. It's now every day. Alfred, there's a place where people go and can sit together, do different practices, just expanding it to every daily meditations and beyond. I think people really getting together in between the formal sessions and practicing together. And just to see the confidence growing, we've been mentoring a lot of these champions to support them. And just having the ripples going out. I think that's probably a good idea.
Okay.
Good sense of what we did at Google.
We've just come from the UK. The last 14 months or so, we've been back in Europe about 5 times. Our first stop was to stop at British Parliament and do a briefing for the All-Parliamentary Roundtable on Mindfulness, where there's over 120 MPs and lords across the parties that have been involved in mindfulness training. And this month, they'll be releasing the final report. You can get the interim report online now. But the final report is basically a national body, the Parliament of Britain, saying, as a national success strategy, that Britain needs to bring mindfulness into organizations and business, into healthcare, into education, and into criminal justice. And I think, as far as I know, this is the first time that a government body from a nation has said, look, our capacity to flourish as a nation depends on these inner practices.
So we just came from Brighton in Sussex, where we have been working with a rapidly growing healthcare system there, a not-for-profit social enterprise serving tens of thousands of people in the Sussex area, with a very innovative CEO who wants to create a mindful culture there for her people and rippling out to all the lives of all the patients they touch. And we have been working there for about 5 months, integrating what they're calling in-balance programs. So finding the right language and translation is really key for bringing this work into organizations. And just recently we did a 5-day mind fitness intensive also right on site, where people would come in, we would drop in, set our intentions for the day, do some practice, go to work, come back, have a mindful lunch, fine-tune, go back out to work, come back at the end of the day, practice, take questions, refine, carry it back home to their families, Monday through Friday, and touched directly. 60% of the organization was involved. Indirectly, the whole organization felt the benefits of people showing up in a more present, connected, conscious way, and really inspiring the practice.
By the end of this 5 days, these practices were so fully loaded into their culture that they had plans let's just continue this next week. So they had plans
this week, right now.
Yeah, so they started again on Monday with this going on. So again, this is about building connectivity between people and creating a more integrated system. Just briefly, some people say, well, what's the business case? Can you make money with this? Yes, Intuit Software, where we worked on a beautiful project. It was a legacy project by the leader there. Great financial outcomes from a program like this.
I think we're going to talk about this extensively. I had the chance to speak with you and spend dinner with you tonight and last night, and so we had a lot of occasions to talk about gazillion things. So I think we could sit together for at least about half a year and could talk about the different and extensive experiences what we have. So
Is it
I
time
think
to wrap it up?
Yes.
Okay, because I didn't see the 5-minute sign. So
Yeah.
could I just broker for
Yes.
2-3 minutes
Yes.
here? Okay, because
Yes.
we were watching for the sign.
How can I
to
resist
appear.
that?
So through these practices, we re-engineer our brains, okay? You're not going to get neural re-engineering without intensive practice over time. Novices on the right, long-term meditators on the left. Practice makes a difference. And I think, as Otto was showing us with his model, business as usual is not going to create the kind of world that we want to create. We need to find a way to drop that curve to access deeper and deeper levels of wisdom if humanity is going to survive and thrive. And really, our highest vision for this wisdom work within organizations is that groups of people really develop their capacity to listen deeply together, holding big global questions, and source the kind of guidance and inspiration that we need to find solutions to those problems and bring forth the kinds of innovations and breakthroughs and creativity that we need. And we'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. So now Thubten will tell a little bit about his experience, and there's one overlap. I think we worked together when I was working for Google in Dublin, and you came to Dublin as well. Maybe you want to share some of your experiences.
Thank you. So that was really inspiring. Thank you. I don't know what I can add to that, and I have no slides. Oh, I have a slide. Oh, that's lovely. That's really good. Okay, so I'll say a few things about what I do. As you can see, I'm a Tibetan Buddhist monk. I'm not Tibetan myself, but I grew up in an Anglo-Indian family in the south of England. And then when I was 21, I became a monk at Samyeling Monastery in Scotland, which is a Tibetan Buddhist monastery. And during that time, I've spent some time at the monastery training. Also, I was in retreat for 4 or 5 years, and also teaching. So I've been teaching meditation for probably about 18 years. And actually, I was going into organizations before they called it mindfulness. Now it's so big as mindfulness. And in those days, that wasn't really talked about much. And when I first went into an organization, it was into a very big management consultancy firm in London. And as I walked through the doors, the thought went through my head, I wonder how this will go down. I mean, the outfit and everything. But it went really well, and they had me back every month. Basically because I always explain that meditation is beyond religion. Meditation or mindfulness is training the mind, and that isn't the property of any one religion. It's a human experience. So people get past the robes very quickly when I explain about how we're trying to look at our minds. And in fact, if you sometimes nowadays, well, as you know, then mindfulness became very big, and I went into retreat, and when I came out of retreat, everybody was talking about mindfulness. And so I carried on teaching, and I always say you don't really need to make a separation between meditation and mindfulness. They're the same thing. If you were to get 2 people sitting next to each other meditating, and one is a Buddhist and one is a mindfulness person, are they watching their breath in a different way? I don't think so. They're just looking at their minds. So I try to kind of create a real togetherness here where there's no separation between Buddhism or non-Buddhism. What I teach is mindfulness, which is based on the Sutra of the 4 Mindfulnesses, which is a very basic teaching in Buddhism, involving the body, involving breathing, involving emotion, mind, thought, etc. And the most important things to emphasize, I feel, are compassion. So very often I'm brought into an organization. So I work with companies, and right now I'm working every month at Google and at other companies, and also schools and hospitals, prisons, drug rehab centers, so a very sort of varied range of places. And very often I'm brought in sort of on the stress ticket, stress, how to overcome stress. And what I try to explain is, yes, we can learn how to overcome stress, but then what? Is it just about stress management and well-being? Is that it? And I try to explain how meditation works, that actually if you're meditating because you want well-being, you won't get well-being because there's a lot of feelings of lack there. If I sit down to meditate because I want to feel good, I'll probably end up feeling bad because of when I want to feel good, I'm telling myself I don't feel good. Do you know what I mean? I'm telling myself I need well-being because I lack well-being. So we're starting from a feeling of total deficiency. And so that's one thing. Another thing is to try to help people understand the importance of compassion. So moving beyond ego into more of a sense of, that's what we're doing at Google now. We're practicing compassion meditations, and people are really excited about that because people don't just want to live in their own bubble and think, my stress, my well-being. There needs to be a sense of connection with others. So I think the first stage in all forms of meditation training is to really get people, and even if they don't go on to meditation, just get them to understand one thing, which is your mind is everything. So if you get people to write down on a piece of paper the 3 things or the 5 things, the main 5 things that cause them stress, they'll actually fill both sides of the page when they write it down. And then you get them to say, is it those things or is it your thoughts about those things? Is it your thoughts about your job, your boss, your husband, your wife, all of those things? So then you're getting people to understand how they think and how they feel is really where the happiness and suffering arise from. Then I think we need to get people to redefine their idea of what happiness is. We live in a culture that encourages happiness, a search for external happiness, happiness that comes from outside, and also happiness that is more like a kind of sensory experience, feeling high, feeling. I'll tell you a story. About 20 years ago, I was doing a lot of meditation, so more than usual, and I was getting more and more depressed. And I went to my teacher and I said, hey, this meditation is making me depressed. And he said, it's not the meditation that's making you depressed, it's you. It's your way of doing the meditation. And he said, you meditate like a junkie. It was so true. He helped me to realize that I was meditating because I wanted a nice feeling. Almost like meditating like trying to drink 4 cups of coffee and feeling kind of a sort of buzz. And that makes you feel bad because you are grasping after a good experience. The problem with grasping is it goes together with disappointment. Because when you're grasping to feel good, you're pushing yourself to feel good, then whatever you feel is not good enough because you've created a habit of pushing and grasping. So whatever happens to you is not enough because you're already jumping over it, looking for the next thing. So this taught me a lot, and it's very important to make a lot of mistakes in meditation. Very important, because then you learn. So that taught me something. Another thing I learned was meditating to try to clear my mind. Disaster. And I really don't like it when meditation teachers sit in front of a class and say, now clear your mind. I think that's a very aggressive thing to say. You're telling somebody just kind of blank your mind out, and of course there's loads of thoughts and emotions. So I lead meditation classes, people come up to me at the end and say, I can't do it. Why can't you do it? Because I can't clear my mind. That's not the right approach. Clearing your mind, emptying your mind, is trying to go into a kind of comatose state. And meditation's about waking up, not going to sleep or removing. It's about clarity. So I find these 2 things very prevalent in people, especially in the West. Meditating because of wanting to feel something pleasurable, and meditating in order to switch off. So a lot of my work is around trying to sort of overcome those two myths and help people redefine happiness. Maybe happiness isn't about feeling great. Maybe happiness is about having friendship with your own emotions. Maybe accepting how you feel. Accepting what is going on with awareness, with love, with compassion. So instead of trying to feel good, just feel how you feel. You are what you are. So add awareness to that with compassion. That's happiness, rather than trying to find a kind of escapist high or bliss or something like that. So I'm kind of rambling a bit. I haven't prepared a speech. I generally don't, and I don't have slides, and I'm just kind of talking, but I hope what I said was interesting and useful. I think I'll stop there, and we should just chat with each other. That's much more useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thubten.
Thank you.
Wonderful experience. Joelle and Michelle, we had yesterday a conversation about one client who came to you, who probably not necessarily everybody wants to combine with mindfulness and meditation. This client was. So you were thinking about this, and tell us a little bit about this process and about the client who came to you and how you came to a decision to bring. We're talking about the Pentagon and the American Army, how they approached you, and how you came to the decision and what you did there.
It's a long story. But essentially, I was working at the medical center. I get a call from a former graduate student who'd just come back from a meeting with the Delta Force saying they've just released a study saying more than twice as many men and women have committed suicide when they've returned home from war than died in combat. And the people I'm working with there are really grief-stricken by that. They want to equip the next wave of soldiers with skills to make wiser decisions and not repeat the mistakes. And I told them I knew some people who could design the program for them. So we spent an afternoon, wrote out a description, sent it off, heard back right away. This is the most extraordinary orchestration of human technology we've ever seen. But in the meantime, we started calling our teachers saying, is this a good idea? You know, are we just going to create better killers or what have you? And the word we got back from the Dalai Lama, from Sogyal Rinpoche, from Brother David Steindl-Ras, from Dzong Rinpoche, Ram Dass, you know, a lot of our teachers were basically, if you have a chance to work with people with enormous amounts of power, and you can do anything to deepen the wisdom and compassion by which they use that power, you've got to take this on.
And we rely upon you for the success of this program.
So every time we said, and we basically said, look, with your backup, we'll consider this. Without it, we're not going to touch this. I wrote my conscientious objector thesis for the U.S. military when I was in high school. So this was not my kind of assignment. But basically, when it all came down to it, you know, many pages of contracting and all, our basic mission was to teach them to recognize and befriend their inner enemies and stop the war inside. And we were able to do this program because we could bring in a lab with $200,000 worth of biofeedback and neurofeedback equipment, which then let us take them on a month-long silent Vipassana-style mindfulness retreat.
Which we didn't call retreat because that doesn't have a positive connotation in the military. So it was an encampment. Coming back to the skillful language, an encampment. Yes.
But just briefly, we're 3 weeks in, and this is the most terrifying, guys, these macho, fearless dudes had ever done, was the idea of sitting silently with their own minds for 30 days. They were terrified. We had a 6-month full-time program. They did no other duty but hang out with us and our team. It's an insanely intensive program. But we're 3 weeks into the program, the retreat. We give a talk one night on interdependence, and at one point, and how everything and everyone is connected. And at the end of that, one of the soldiers raises his hand, and you can see his mental gears grinding, and he says, if what you're saying is true, but Joel, if what you're saying is really true, how could we ever kill anybody?
Ding.
And we said, shall we talk about that? But essentially, outcomes of the program, best teams in the NATO games, able to complete mission simulations never done before, running covert humanitarian operations all over Europe that's helped tens of thousands of people that nobody ever heard about to help people.
And letters from their families and their children, their wives and their children, thanking us for, thank you, my dad. I have a dad again. My dad doesn't just come home and knock me around the house, or I have a husband. We actually sit and talk. I mean, for us, those are some of the highest feedback criteria, just getting those very, very appreciative letters.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very powerful insight. For me, a lecture of including people, not excluding. Thank you so much. Thubten. One question, we were once sitting together in Dublin and talking about your personal journey, and so how did you decide to become a monk? Because you were not born as a Tibetan monk, I learned. So can you share your experience of this?
I was 21, and basically it was stress. I was so stressed. I was living a very hectic life in New York. I was an actor, and the stress of the way I was living was just too much for me, and I needed some time out. So I decided to learn meditation. I grew up in a sort of Buddhist family, but it was never forced on me, so it was just there in the background. So I decided to learn meditation. But being the way I am, I'm a sort of extreme person. I thought, well, I'll become a monk and learn meditation as a monk. But you can become a monk for just a year. So that was my plan. Become a monk for a year, sort my head out, go back and, get rich and famous. It didn't quite work out like that, because 11 months into the year, I started to really feel that there's a lot going on that I need to look at, and I started to question my motivation in life. Why am I doing this? Why am I a monk? What is this about? And what is life about? So I decided to take vows for another year. Then things got deeper and deeper. I went into retreat. And after, I think, being a short-time monk for about 4 years, I took life vows, because the whole thing changed for me. I started to really want to help others and help others with their mind. So that changed. I went into retreat. I started teaching, and now this is what I do. And I feel very connected to everybody. In a way, I'm sort of weird because I'm in the West in Eastern robes and a monk, but I'm very connected because I go everywhere and teach people about their mind, about happiness, about emotions, and there's not this kind of separation. I really like that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We spoke yesterday about the interconnectedness, and we spoke about people who say, I have enough from this world. I would like to go somewhere else. I would like to do my meditation, go to my hermitage somewhere in the Himalaya, and don't be involved in this world anymore. Just check out. But that is not what a lot of people do in their days. So you said that people are really connected while they're doing meditation in the hermitage, and other people doing something else. So what is your opinion on that? Maybe, Michelle, you want to start?
So a number of years ago, Joel and I had the unreasonable good fortune to spend a year in a silent retreat. And it was actually kind of a crazy time to disappear from the world, because our books were coming out, our first CD was out, it was just like professionally on the curve, but it was the opportunity was there, and that opportunity doesn't come all the time. It was an incredible yogi named Gelong Thubten, a teacher for the Dalai Lama, who had been invited, and Dalai Lama had asked him to come to Seattle and lead this shamatha retreat, which is a single-pointed concentration, really developing a deep capacity to focus the mind. And a year, everything was being set up, and we'd always wanted to do a deeper retreat. And if things came together, we were able to do the retreat. And I, for myself, in my little, well, how many meters would that be?
3 by 3.
I know what the feet would be. 3 by 3 about room. It was not a group retreat. We were all in our own little rooms doing our practice. I had a little earth globe hanging by the little window, just to remind me all the time, like, why am I doing this? Especially on those days when things were a little rougher and tougher. It's like, oh, because I want to be able to bring something of value back into the world, and just keeping the earth and all the beings in my heart, dedicating every practice, every session for the benefit of all living beings. And just, if there could be even one less confused or crazy person on the planet, that would be a blessing. But to be able to come back with something of value, to be able to share. So it was a very active, it was not at all a detachment from the world, but a very much, in my consciousness through that whole retreat, inclusion of and dedication of the practice to benefiting others. And when we came out of retreat, actually, it was as if the universe was saying, good, you did your work, we're ready for you. And actually our career, everything just exploded when we came out. Which wouldn't have been what you would have imagined rationally after disappearing for so long. No LinkedIn, no Facebook. And it's like everything grew, and we had opportunities to offer and share that.
Thank you. Do you have similar experiences?
Similar. I was getting quite well known. I was very much in the public eye, and then I disappeared for 4 years. You know, it felt like the reason I went into retreat was because I was teaching a lot, but I felt it was artificial. I felt that I was speaking from intellect, but not from my heart. And I needed to deepen my practice. I needed to go into retreats so that I could help others. And that's a strange paradox, because retreat sounds like, well, you retreat. It sounds a bit selfish, but as you were saying, it's not. You do it so that you can deepen your understanding of meditation and your understanding of your mind so that you can help others. And it was the most terrifying experience of my life. 4 years backed into a corner with your own mind. It was not easy. My friends, I had 2 types of friends. Before I went in, Type A was saying to me, oh, you're so lucky, you're going to be just happy, cut off from the world. Type B said, wow, you're going to really suffer. Type B were right, because it was hard work. You're there with your mind, there's no distraction, you start to realize how much you use talking, for example, because we were silent as well, not for the whole 4 years, but for 5 months we were silent. You see how you use talking to escape from how you really feel. We use distraction, we use our phone, we use the computer, we use people. So to be all of that gone away and then look at your mind is very challenging. But I'm so glad I did it, because it really helped me to understand more about what people go through in meditation, and it helped me to be more happy. I think, you know, we want to help others to be happy, we have to be happy too. And so it taught me more about what happiness is.
Could I just say one?
Yes, please.
You know, for us, in separate rooms, not talking or touching or being communication for a year, it was the most intimate year of our life. You know, because as islands, as you deepen your sense of identity, the connections grow ever deeper and sweeter. So not only were we phenomenally more deeply connected at those deeper strata of being, but we were in that kind of deep union and communion and active engagement with all beings. You know, there's a dimension of each of our hearts that's opened into the hearts of all beings everywhere. But we're cut off from that so much of the time by what Einstein called the optical delusion of consciousness. But Einstein said, you know, we must free ourselves from this prison of the optical delusion of consciousness by...
The optical delusion that
It
makes
keeps
us
us-
feel that we're separate from each other. Yeah.
We must free ourselves from this prison by widening the circle of our compassion to embrace all living beings and the whole of nature and all of its beauty. What a gift. just to have even an inkling of our capacity to do that, and then a multidimensional architecture of our being that gives us access to the deepest hearts and souls of all beings.
What a wonderful conclusion. Let's just finish this panel. Just what do you wish from the audience here as the next step for going forward and spreading the good vibe?
I saw one hand. Do we want to take a question?
Yeah, take a question.
Yeah.
We are talking about organization culture, right? What about top management? What about the Fortune 500? What's your experience about top management? Talking about the people, and now I'm talking to almost believers. Touching us. But what about top management? Because that's where the culture starts. So
They're not immune to this work. And when they've had their second heart attack, when their third wife has left, when they've got a cancer diagnosis, or when they look around and they see the suffering of their people, we oftentimes get invited in. Where top management gets hampered is by their boards. And we've seen that time and time again. They have great aspirations to do this work, but then they have to battle with their boards, and they're oftentimes disappointed when they get up to that level and they see what they have to deal with.
We had yesterday a wonderful conversation about the individual development and the structural development. So structure and organization keeps also a certain emotion and a certain style in itself. But if you can connect with yourself and tap into this collective capacity, what Otto yesterday mentioned, and collective intelligence, I think we are strong enough to change that structure and system and give it another outlook and another direction. And then it's much more easier.
I also find that when you, with an organizational structure and they want to make changes in the working practices and the organizational structure, without mindfulness, those changes, they go on a course, they learn how to think differently or work differently or behave differently. Without mindfulness, they're back at their desk, it flies out the window. So if you add mindfulness in with other forms of training, as you're doing with organizational restructuring, then you're giving people a tool so they can learn a new way of doing things, and then they can remember to apply it even when they don't want to. Because one aspect of mindfulness is being able to remember what it is you want to do. So you don't end up just flowing down the road of reactions. So the two are combined very effectively.
So just coming back to your question, Alfred, what I would wish for everyone here is just to have confidence that each of you have your own special, unique gift and way and experience and perspective to make a difference, and that you connect with others, build the alliances. There was that beautiful image of the tree that nourishes, it becomes strong through connecting with the roots of the other trees, that you really develop the capacities that you feel you need to be as effective as you can, and form those partnerships and alliances, and have the confidence that people are hungry for it, the time is right for it, the time is now for it. Just begin, just share what you can, and keep growing your own wisdom and compassion as you do that.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you to being here. And so we have now a 1 hour break till 1 o'clock. And again, like yesterday, there will be a little bit of lunch and tea and coffee served on the second floor, I think. And
we have some copies of one of our books, Living in Balance, and we'll be up in the lunch area there. If anybody's interested or wants to talk further, we'll be up there for a while.
see you at 1 o'clock back here. Thank you.